introduce our panel one more time. Before I do that, I want to thank our sponsors one more time, which is U.S. Pavement, which is an annual sponsor, Northmark, who also is an annual sponsor, and Green International Affiliates, Inc., who is a sponsor for today's event. And I'll introduce our panel one more time. We have Chelsea Seifert, and she's from Quonset Development Corporation. And Jeff Munez. I'm so bad at Northmark. And wait, I'll get worse. Watch. I'm Mayor Donald Grebian. Oh, I did it good. Okay. He's the mayor of Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Brett Johnson is from Fortuous Partners. Bill Scully, Green International Affiliates, Inc. I want to thank you all for being on the panel this morning. And we're going to start the panel discussion. We'll start with Chelsea. Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning.
Okay. So as operators of one of Rhode Island's largest business parks, what's the Quonset Development Corporation focused on during the pandemic to ensure business continuity and recovery? Which is kind of an important question, huh?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? For those, I mean, most folks in Rhode Island know who we are, the Quonset Development Corporation, but for those that don't, we are a quasi-state agency, and we are responsible for operating and managing the Quonset Business Park here in North Kingstown, Rhode Island. The Quonset Business Park is over 3,200 acres in size. We have over 200 companies presently, and over 12,200 employees work here at the park. So as you can imagine, when the pandemic hit, our focus was really on keeping operations alive here at the park. We operate almost like a small city in that we have our own water and wastewater facilities. We do all of the snow plowing and road maintenance. We also own several buildings that we need to keep up and running. And so, we started strategizing about how we can keep all of those things running through the pandemic, and especially if, some of our staff were to get sick and have to be out or be close contacts in quarantine. And so part of that was strategizing on sort of shifting, right? So, I'm sure Mayor Grebian can appreciate this, right? When you have a wastewater plant, you have to make sure that not all of your wastewater plant operators are out at the same time, right? So we split our shifts. We did as much as we could to say, we're going to have 3 guys. If we have a team of 6, it'll be 3 and 3, and they won't ever see each other because we need them to stay healthy. So outside of that, we also worked with tenants to make sure that, their leasing was current, and if they had issues paying their lease bills, then we worked with them through that. But outside of that, right, that immediate, how do we keep operating? We took the time really to strategize on how we could ensure a strong recovery for the park and the businesses in the park. So we continued to work with existing businesses on infrastructure upgrades and expansion opportunities that they had been involved in or seeking prior to the pandemic hitting. But more importantly, we started thinking about how we could use the time to improve the 200 acres we have left to develop here at the park. So we have been planning and engineering port improvements, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And we've been working with Rhode because there's some missing ramps on 403, so we've been doing some engineering related to that. Looking at our circulation patterns, we, with the help of Vision 3 architects, who I know is on this webinar, completed a new office building, which allows tenants to basically rent a room or rent several rooms or a suite, right? So if you're a company that downsized during the pandemic, you can come to Quonset and take one room, so you can have a place to, like I always joke, get away from your children. So we've been working on a bunch of that sort of stuff. We've also been working on some site-specific readiness improvements, right? So we are two old Navy installations here at the park, so we have electrical lines that are just in the wrong place. or we have, an old sewer line that needs to be relined. So we've been working on some of that stuff to get those parcels more ready for development to come. And then we've also just been doing more general concept planning for the acreage we have left, right? To show that it's flexible, it can accommodate, a 750,000 square foot building or several, 100,000 square foot buildings. So we've been doing all of that to sort of get ready for when folks are ready to invest in business expansion and come back to life.
Thank you, Chelsea. Now we'll go to Jeff. Jeff, current health of the Providence multifamily market, with all the talk of uncertainty and apartment rental growth nationally, how has the 2020 affected the lender's view of Providence multifamily properties?
Right. So, yeah, great question. So Providence has actually remained one of the stronger multifamily markets throughout 2020, which is a surprise because, like you mentioned, you're hearing nationally, a lot of prime markets are actually seeing a decline in terms of either rent collections, a boost up in both concessions and vacancy rates. But surprisingly, Providence has been a remarkably stable market throughout 2020. 2020 actually brought a decrease of 30 basis points in vacancies from the year prior. So from the lender's point of view, we're looking at that from a very stable market. While it is a secondary market, it is one of the secondary markets that we would be more bullish on. And despite of the larger supply of multifamily actually coming online, absorption has remained positive. So these units that are coming online, either Class A or new Class B renovated Class B products, the supply doesn't matter. It's constantly getting rented out. So we're seeing this is more evidence of the demand of the market. And then even in the Class A side, so what we've been seeing nationally, and as close as Boston, a lot of Class A properties that are located within densely populated areas in the city are actually not faring that well. Those are the ones where COVID has certainly impacted in a very much higher at a higher rate as opposed to some of the lower class properties. But in Providence, it's been nothing compared to what we're seeing in some of the larger markets. While there has been a softening in terms of rent growth, we really haven't seen any true rent declines. And the biggest surprise is the fact that the Providence workforce is, usually by eds and meds standards, they're schools going virtual, jobs allowing a hybrid workforce, and we're still not seeing housing distress in the housing market or the rental market. So when it comes to some of the fundamental market indicators, lenders are looking at a market like Providence extremely bullish. The supply is getting absorbed. You have the South Water Street project that's bringing luxury condos, where the condo construction market has been a little bit more on the risky side, especially during 2020. We've actually been able to see that growth continue on. And then additionally, you have public transportation options, which are abundant and are even growing compared to other areas where they've already have a well-established transit system. You have the multi-hub bus system coming in, which is going to connect the Innovation Hub to Kennedy Plaza and the train station, which is going to be, I feel like it'd be a pretty big boost to the local economy, especially with your proximity to Boston, which is going to usually be priced at a higher premium, but makes it more affordable for tenants to live in Providence or in areas around Providence to commute or to even find jobs within the local economy there. And rents in Providence are averaging at about a $700 per month discount as opposed to some of the other markets. So overall, we're bullish on it. We love a good tight market. One of the questions we usually are asked is we're usually asking our borrowers is, how has the property fared in the last year? Trailing 12 operating statements have never been more important, and seeing how rental collections have fared. And in Providence, we've just seen a more stable and consistent performance from multifamily there as opposed to other markets. So definitely bullish. Definitely see that as a growing economy. Historically, it has been growing at around a 3% average, and maybe we're probably plateauing closer to 1% over the past year. But overall, I mean, we're looking at that from a longer term view. We think Providence is going to be one of the larger growing markets, especially when it comes to multifamily.
Now, what about, is that also go with new construction for multifamily, or is this, okay?
Yeah, those fundamentals lend well to new construction. I mean, supply is not going to be an issue where you're having other areas that are putting up tens of thousands of units. Historically, Providence has been kind of a lower supply, or less of a lower supply going in per year. We're still seeing the consistent developments. Projects are getting approved, and we're seeing a fair amount of repositioning as well, as developers are looking to take advantage of some of the infill denser populated areas like a Pawtucket, or some of those areas that weren't historically multifamily markets, but are certainly primed to be.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And now we're going to go to Mayor Gravian.
Rick, no issues. Go ahead, keep going.
Well, you know, I never ask, usually I ask people that are on panels to send in questions. I never ask a politician to send in questions because I know they like to talk. So I'm gonna give you a little starting point, and then you can fly with that. How's that? Okay.
Deal.
And you're a native of Pawtucket, right?
Yep, that is correct. I'm born and raised there. Yep.
And you're on your 6th term?
Yeah, I'm in my 6th term. It goes by fast.
Wow.
Yeah, I am.
So tell us what's going on in Pawtucket, because it seems to be quite a bit.
I was listening to Chelsea and Jeff, and they're at both sides of the pendulum, if you will, right? The pandemic has, in a lot of ways, affected all communities, and nationally as well, and every community is dealing with it differently. We have a very strong community, a very diverse community, so we've been dealing with the pandemic on the ground. It's not anywhere or anything anybody wanted to deal with, but we've put the tools on the ground, and thanks to our governmental officials, and now with the Biden Act, America's Act, there's money coming in, so we're able to help. So during the pandemic, it was, how do we balance through providing the services with limited resources, keeping everybody as we could safe and secure, meaning City Hall employees versus our workers at DPW to our residents. And there's a broad spectrum. And like Chelsea, the business model, as she mentioned, changed drastically. We're still here working a lot at home, which we never thought we'd see out of government. We're forced to change. We still have appointments only right now. We do see, the light at the end of the tunnel as vaccinations are coming out, and we focused in on our vaccinations. So, we're struggling. We're doing what we can as communities. We've got great EMA folks and medical professions out in the community, from doing testing to vaccination. So we're working on that. On the other side, right, as Jeff mentioned, the markets, while, rent has been frozen, there's limited capacity here in Pawtucket. The market has changed drastically for residential, but with our partners and fortuitous partners, during the pandemic, we were able to take advantage of this decline. It's not something, like I said, we all wanted to deal with. There was no SOP on how to deal with a pandemic. But on the flip side, we've been able to take advantage, working very closely with the state, the fortuitous, to forge this development forward. And this development, I know we'll talk a little bit about, I don't want to take Brett's thunder, but we'll talk about, we've been able to, put in 50 million, a transit hub that's coming here, that's going to be benefited by the fortuitous development, which includes residential, commercial. So we're able to capitalize in these tough times, take advantage, if you will, on the market rates, and the funding and mechanisms and the rates. So we've been able to do that. So from us, it's been all over. We're all over the cities, all over the map, from dealing with a pandemic to keeping our employees safe, our residents safe, trying to provide services, to, in 2 to 3 years or 2 years, when we see the soccer and the development, we'll be able to do that. So we've been across the board. So I don't want to take up all your time, Rick. Keep me focused, because you're right. I'll take the whole time talking to you about Pawtucket, but I don't want to do that to you. So,
well, I appreciate it, Mayor, and I do applaud you for going through all these tough times and getting the job done. So that's some accomplishment.
And Rick, if I can, just to throw it, it's really the people that you put around you. You know, I'm smart enough that I know I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room, and you bring those professional people in and work in those partnerships. We've been able to do that. So thanks.
That's why you get 6 terms. And so let's go to Brett Johnson of Fortuous Partners. And, you know, this is a perfect lead-in from the mayor. In light of the recent announcement of the public support for Tidewater Landing, can you give us an update on the overall status of the project?
Yeah, Rick, thank you. And thank you to the sponsors for the opportunity to be on this panel. It's a real honor, and I hope my 3 kids and new puppy behave while I'm on this panel.
Hey, this is a family show. They are welcome to be on.
It's going to be a real family show because it's tough to keep my kids off my lap when I'm on these Zoom calls. But in the meantime, it's a real honor. And to echo the mayor's comments, I couldn't be more complimentary of the team that the mayor has around him and all of the support that we've been able to achieve from the city of Pawtucket and also Rhode Island Commerce Corporation to bring Tidewater Landing to reality. About a month ago, we announced significant and critical public support through Rebuild Rhode Island, and then would ultimately be tax increment financing to help provide some critical infrastructure support around. It's a $300 million plus development on 2 shores of the Seekonk. I mean, prime real estate location. Half of the property is in an opportunity zone, which relative to the private investment is a critical element of the support. And the entire thesis is using professional sports, and in this example, professional soccer, as an anchor and a driver for incredible social and economic impact. Thousands of jobs, once stabilized, and over the lifetime of the project, hundreds of millions of dollars of tax benefit to the city and to the state. And the benefit to the community is that this really will be a 365-day a year live, work, play development, which will be, you know, without hyperbole, will really be will be, I believe, the pride of Rhode Island. I think it's where the entire state is going to come out to support their professional soccer team. And we have every interest and intention of launching a professional women's team. And we'll host a lot more than just soccer. It's great for American football. It'll be great for rugby, lacrosse, field hockey. I mean, any rectangular sport. And then hosting concerts. And then the broader development, you know, will be a place where people want to hold weddings and a whole bunch of other, you know, high school graduations. It'll really be an asset that the community will be enjoying for decades. So with that, again, it's a real honor and pleasure to be on this panel, and thank you for the opportunity.
Now, Brett, are you looking for local development partners and broader partnership relationships to come into this as well?
Yeah, we've been positively, what I'd say, overwhelmed by, understandably, the local interest that's reached out. And at the end of the day, professional sports is a local endeavor. I'm honored and blessed to be part of a lot of franchises, the most notable of which is the team in Phoenix, Arizona. And when you take these professional teams, you bring a lot of youth components into it. So we'll affiliate with all the youth soccer clubs, but also a lot of the youth sports clubs in the state. And so by extension, I guess to your question, absolutely. This is, at the end of the day, this will be a local project. Why I am technically out of state, the majority of what we do, what we partner, who we work with, will really have a Rhode Island feel to it. And at the end of the day, this is going to be Rhode Island's teams, plural, which I'm excited. And again, the interest on all levels, but in particular locally, in terms of whether it's being part of the team or whether it's getting into and being part of the project, has been beyond encouraging. I would probably say, with some humility, understandable, because again, it's a fairly high profile project, certainly for the city of Pawtucket, and by extension, I would say for the state. So not overwhelmingly surprised by the outreach on it, but we're excited. I think Pawtucket, you know, the mayor, to his credit, between the local transportation hub that's going to be put in place, and with Tidewater, and then a host of other developments that are coming online. You know, I think Pawtucket is going to emerge from this pandemic better than it ever has. And I give, again, all credit to the city and by extension to the state for all of their support, because when COVID hit, everyone doubled, tripled down their efforts to make this happen. They didn't shy away from it. And I think the area needed this project before COVID. I think obviously, understandably, it needs it more than ever now. And I'm really honored, grateful, and humbled by the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Brett. And now we'll go to my friend Bill Scully of Green International Affiliates. Bill, how do you see the transportation infrastructure in parts of Rhode Island and their needs for improvement in some areas? Have the needs in thinking changed since this pandemic?
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Rick, and everyone on the panel. So infrastructure is probably the thing that ties everything together a little bit, whether it's Quonset, you heard Chelsea mention utilities, or the highway interchange area, highway access. Certainly in Pawtucket, you're going to have not only the transit hub, but you're still going to need good access into the stadium area at Tidewater. You know, just this past week, ASCE, the civil engineers, came out with their report card on infrastructure. I think roadways in general got a D+. So while some areas of infrastructure has improved a bit, we're still, you know, a D+ isn't really something to brag about. I think in Rhode Island, I mean, we've seen a lot of the major highways getting some attention, some of the bridges. Rhode has a lot of projects going on, but, you know, still at the local level, it's just more and more of a challenge. How you repair roads, make sure the sidewalks are in good shape, ADA compliance. There's just never enough funds to really deal with some of that, those aspects on the local level. You know, you'd heard Ron Judd from Robotics on today's call. So a lot of the things we do, besides complete streets and all that type of infrastructure, we also do pavement management. And really it comes down to, you know, let's say the public sector, the cities and towns being very effective in what they address, and the private sector being on the same page, whether it's in, you know, contributing to that type of infrastructure or certainly connecting to it. So, and as it relates to the economics and the growth and all that, I mean, we've seen over the last 10 plus years a real movement towards smart growth, walkability, and the like. And certainly in the last year with the COVID and the shutdown everywhere, it just has exploded in terms of people working from home, but now actually getting out more on the street, walking or biking or the like. So it's sort of moved. I think you have a project like Tidewater or Kona Thread or all those areas are new residential projects or mixed use development. You know, I mean, smart growth is mixed use, compact, short walking distances. It gives people a reason to walk somewhere. And they've shown the more walkable, the more bikeable a project is or a city is, then they benefit from increased retail sales, foot traffic sales, restaurants, and property values. So yeah, it has changed. I don't know if we go back much. I think Brett's out in California. They certainly have pushed all of this kind of thinking, you know, years ago. The millennials have been a group that did want to own fewer cars, did want to walk more, do want to live in a more active, nice placemaking kind of environment. So, you know, I don't see us really going back too far, and there's things that can be done to enhance all this type of development.
Well, thank you, Bill. Now we'll go back to Chelsea. On March 2nd, Rhode Island voters approved a $60 million bond for industrial and port development to be managed by the Quonset Development Corporation. Can you share what the Quonset Development Corporation's current thinking on what those monies will be used for?
Sure. Yes, first, thank you, Rhode Island voters. We appreciate your support. So $60 million, it's split into two different sort of pools of money based on the budget and the budget legislation. So the first pool is $20 million that's set aside for infrastructure at the Port of Davisville, which is here at the Quonset Business Park. So with that money, like I said earlier, we are on the land of two former Navy installations. So the Port of Davisville was built by the Navy. Most of the infrastructure is, over 75 years old. And so that 20 million will go to help us sort of secure that infrastructure and rebuild it where we need to. We recently received an $11.1 million grant from the Maritime Administration. So for Pier 1, which is the one that is in most need of repair right now, because we have an ongoing project to reconstruct Pier 2 right now. So that money will, the bond money will go with the NEREJ money and help us with Pier 1 reconstruction. And then we also want to use some of that 20 million to potentially do some limited dredging in the port area to be able to activate the berths to support larger ships. So that's the 20 million. We have received bonds in the past for port infrastructure. This is something we're used to, we're sort of old hat at. And so that money will go towards the port specifically. So the other money is 40 million, and I made notes, but my tablet has now quit on me. Hold on one second. So that 40 million is going to statewide site readiness for industrial specific sites. So this is something that the Commerce Corporation has had limited funds in the past to undertake. They have, given out sort of small grants to do site readiness. But with $40 million, we really need to think sort of bigger picture about what that program looks like and how we share the money throughout the state in an effective way. So really, the idea is that we need to activate industrial land so that it is pad ready for when a new requirement comes on the market. So here at Quonset, we have our site readiness model that we work from. We guarantee if you come to Quonset and you want to build a new building, you can be in the ground in 90 days. And we're able to do that because we have site control, we have all of our permits in place, we have all of our geotech and utility assessments and everything done for every parcel that's available here at the park. And so the idea is that we want to make a slew of those types of properties available in Rhode Island so that when a new business wants to relocate or expand, they can know for sure that they can come to Rhode Island and be in the ground in 90 days. So, we've seen as new requirements come on the market that Rhode Island has a terrible lack of industrial land. I think our broker tells us that, only like 0.5% of industrial property is vacant right now. So there's a need to sort of activate these sites to make them ready to go. So we see this, as an opportunity to take this Quonset model that we've put in place and move it forward so that we have sites that have permits, we have sites that have utilities, we have sites that maybe it's brownfield cleanup, something it has everything else it needs, but there was an environmental condition that needs to be taken care of. So that's the idea. That's the goal of the money. How it rolls out, yet to be determined, right? We're still working on that. We've only known that we had the money for now 15 days. So we're going to work it out, but really it's going to be a team effort, I think, across state government, where we have the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management and Coastal Resources, Historic Preservation, Statewide Planning, RIPTA, Labor and Training, Infrastructure Bank, everyone on the same sort of team moving these properties forward to a readiness state. So that's the general state of it. More info to come. Of course, there'll be some kind of application process, wide outreach to the towns. One thing I should note is that we are going to put a strong emphasis on a partnership with the community. Call it unity with the community, right? So if you're a developer and you want to activate your site, you need to show that your community is behind you. because that is sort of the key in this mix. If you get stuck in a planning board or a rezone for 3 years, then that's something you need to figure out before you come and sort of use that site activation money. Now we can help you with that money, right? If you say, oh, well, this property needs to be rezoned and the city's behind it, but before I can get the residents on board, I need a concept plan, right? So maybe you can use that money to get a concept plan, or maybe you can use that money to show, how many jobs you could provide on that site to help you facilitate that rezoning process. But we want to make sure that the community, the planners, the town and city officials are on the same page with the developer from the very beginning of that process. So that's a general overview. Happy to take questions about the project, the process, realizing that we don't really have the specifics locked down yet.
Although it sounds like you have a plan.
We're trying. We're starting to formulate a plan. We have lots of brainstorming meetings to talk about what we're going to do.
And this is a question that came in, and I was thinking similar, because life science is such a big part of what's going on around the country right now. But Nancy Broner asked, will Quonset work towards site readiness for pharmaceutical manufacturing?
Yeah, so any sort of manufacturing, right? So in the legislation, I don't have it up in front of me right now, there's a long list of sort of uses that we can provide the money to support. So really any kind of manufacturing, warehousing, distribution. I know offshore wind is listed in that, that group of uses. So really anything that, is going to be considered an industrial type of use, which, to me, really any kind of manufacturing, regardless of what you make, would be eligible for this funding.
Fantastic. Let's go back to Jeff. Jeff, what's the outlook on rates? What challenges could we see in the horizon in regards to the debt financing, which is quite a bit of a question right there.
Yeah, and we get this question all the time, and while we're not economists, we can certainly provide tools to help mitigate some of the interest rate risk in the future. But in terms of some challenges that we're seeing on the horizon for debt financing, so we're seeing a lot more equity capital required to even start projects. So typically where a lot of middle market projects were able to get financed with the minimal amount of developer equity into the project, we're now starting to see that requirement tick up, whether in the form of additional escrows, of higher contingencies, and then overall the budgets are typically increasing year over year. So we're looking to track that and seeing that higher construction prices could definitely play a factor in there, but just less or more equity capital being required in terms of the construction lender coming in and providing the debt on those projects. And then Chelsea had alluded to it in her comments, where there's a lot of industrial that asset type has been extremely favorable to the markets. And right now, if you have if you have two assets out of the office, retail, multifamily, and industrial, it's going to be in multifamily and industrial that all the capital is going to be going towards, whether it's from debt financing, construction financing, or even on the permanent side. We're certainly seeing a large appetite for multifamily and industrial, and in Providence, that's no different. Those two asset types are expected to do very well, and they'll demand a lot more capital. And I think in the outlook of what things that we're looking at, I mean, the Fed Reserve is probably driving a lot of the conversation. I know Jerome Powell has a conference today where he'll speak on the Fed Reserve potentially providing additional support to the economy. We don't know what that's going to look like or how that may affect, but typically we would expect yields to generally look to flatten out, as opposed to the jumps that have been happening since January, where you're seeing the 10-year U.S. Treasury index jump about almost 70 basis points since the beginning of the year. And that's just making the longer-term financing a lot more expensive. And generally, that's where short-term rates are expected to track. So we'll know more once he speaks, but generally, we're expecting them to continue to be bullish on the economy as the recovery continues, which is going to be dictated by vaccine rollouts and the overall opening of the economy. And then I think one thing that borrowers should certainly keep in mind is a lot of lenders are putting in loan structures when it comes to really any type of financing, whether it's deposits on some speculative projects or whether it is operating escrows for cash flowing properties. We're seeing a lot more structure, which typically will involve borrowers having to bring in more equity to their projects, and that can hinder their flexibility to take on either additional projects or have to bring in potential partners, which can kind of take capital from other projects. So we're seeing a lot more of that on the institutional side, some of the larger projects, especially when you're looking at some of the agency financing available. So if you've got a project that is coming out of construction and you're going to start going to market on some permanent financing as a construction takeout, you may want to expect to look at what the escrows are going to be, what some of the reserve requirements are going to be. We've seen agencies request up to 12 months of P&I for escrows, and that can be generally expensive, especially if you're a mid-market property owner. Some of the institutional players may not have as big of an issue, but certainly that can hinder the growth on some of the smaller developments. So those are kind of the things that we're looking at. I think on the long side, we're seeing rates creep up, but overall, we're in a low rate environment. We're not in a, where we were over a year ago. I think we're kind of trending in that direction, but I don't think that it's something where you should be having sticker shock if you're suddenly seeing a 10-year rate jump closer to 3.5% or between 3.5% and 4%. I think that's generally expected, and that's signs of a healthy economy.
And Jeff, I know you hit on Providence quite a bit, but you really go all over New England, but you do cover all of Rhode Island pretty much. So if anyone's interested in projects or properties that they want to finance in Rhode Island, in any part, they can contact you. But you look at this Tidewater Landing project, there's going to be quite a few different types of business. I would think retail, you got Brett, you said there's going to be multifamily also in that?
Yeah, considerable amount. That's
yeah. Right. Is there going to be hotel and projects like that as well?
Yeah, so the plan is to do a two-phased approach. First phase is obviously the stadium is critical because that's the driver for everything. And as part of that, the multifamily will also be part of it, in some retail and some office, not as much. Obviously, the pandemic has shifted the calculus on that. But second phase will include a multi-purpose year-round indoor event center with the thought of adding a hotel. I think, the timing in that second phase will be better in terms of occupancy rates. And anytime you have a stadium where you're going to have visiting teams, a hotel is a nice fit. A food hall, a multi-purpose food hall. I've got some experience in that asset class. We're building one in San Clemente, California, and it's a fantastic addition to any community. You get 14, 15 vendors under one roof, give family, every single option they could ever want. And then I think, because of the pandemic, we'll probably shift. So some of the accommodation will be to actually handle drive-through traffic on that. That's just being able to make sure that you can accommodate any scenario that exists, if you will.
So Jeff, there'll be opportunities for developers to contact you if they want to do a project in that Tidewater Landing area.
We welcome it. No, and that's where we're excited about it, because it has the optionality for us to partner with a lot of what I'll call is leading asset class experts. Multifamily, the retail, the hotel, office, the food hall, obviously the stadium, et cetera. So we really look forward and welcome to partnering up with the best and brightest in different elements that make up this project. And then again, continuing to work with the community and by extension, the city and the state, to bring it to fruition.
So Mayor, this project, the Tidewater Landing, this is going to sort of set a tone for Pawtucket, I would think. So now you have a lot of the old mill areas that have to be repurposed or redeveloped. Are you seeing some effects from this?
So, pre-pandemic, we were seeing a lot of growth in the mill rehabilitation of the mills and the reuse. And yeah, we're still seeing some, did drastically slow down. But we've got acres around the commuter rail on that area. So that we're seeing a lot of activity. We see a lot of people kicking tires and actually purchasing properties over there. We're trying to balance through what our housing needs are, making sure that we provide, affordability in the plans. So we're going in that area and we're growing in that area. Specifically around the fortuitous area, this has been an area that the city has had many master plans and changed in all their comprehensive plans because of the waterfront. Working with the fortuitous partners, the state of Rhode Island, Commerce, we were able to incorporate a lot of I'll say the years or centuries of ideas that have been out there for waterfront access, to the walkability, as you've mentioned, Rick, and to what Jeff is saying, to that small area. So we've got really great partners and we've got a plan. And, the pandemic slowed things down a little bit, but it also got us to take a real hard look at what the marketability is and what the market-driven needs are. Collectively with the folks at Fortuitous, on the Tidewater plan, we've agreed to phase it in, right? We know that the soccer complex and the residential will start the reuse of that area with bike paths and waterfront access, and then phase in the other areas, which will also be market driven as well. So we're excited about that. So we've got it in 2 areas. We're seeing different, and the only reason I bring up the commuter rail is we've got all this unutilized mill space, and I won't say a lot, but there is quite a bit. There is manufacturing in there. So we're seeing that mix of where manufacturing is still manufacturing. We have Northeast Knitting over there running in one of the old buildings. They're a company that's world known, and we're now bringing in residential into that area. So we're excited about those opportunities. But over here, it's pretty much of a clean slate, and it's really market driven. And really, the Fortuitous partners have been driving this, that they want it to be family oriented, right? It's about soccer. Yeah, it's about bringing people in. There's that activity, that placeholder, if you will. And then what else goes along with it to keep people coming in. And so we see that. We're excited about that. But again, it's all market driven, as Jeff has done, right? The numbers will tick up a little bit and everybody's watching the bond capacity and everybody's rates. But that's why we feel this is a much more comprehensive approach.
Great. Brett, I'm going to go back to you because part of the project is the importance of the P3 and the Opportunity Zone programs that were in place. A lot of people are a little nervous about opportunity zones going forward because they're afraid the new administration might not keep that in place. So how is it working out for you?
Yeah, we remain sanguine relative to the long-term viability of the program. I mean, it was truly one of the few elements of the Trump tax bill that had bipartisan support and continues to have significant bipartisan support. And I'm a big advocate of the Opportunity Zone program when it's done exactly the way we're doing it, which is taking an area that has not seen as much private capital come in as anyone would like, utilizing that program to get private capital to be a majority of the capital that goes in a $350 million project. You can quickly do the math in terms of the majority, 80+% approximately, is going to be private capital. And so I think it's exactly what the framers of the program were seeking. There's criticism, is it the low-hanging fruit of the criticism of the program? I get it. I mean, there are certain census tracts that, when you look at them today versus when they were potentially, I'd see it in my backyard in Los Angeles. There's some very hot neighborhoods here that people look at and say, why is that an opportunity zone? But they took it off a 13 census. The world's different today than it was then. But, from my perspective, regardless of the Opportunity Zone program, we were keen on Pawtucket. We were absolutely keen on these parcels because they're prime waterfront parcels that have been sitting fallow for decades, to put it mildly. And so, but with the added opportunity zone benefits, it's a nice to have, it's not a must have. So I don't lose sleep at night over things I can't control. If the Biden administration decides to change the parameters or get rid of it, we'll continue to move forward with it. All that being said, the tea leaves certainly seem that while they might make some tweaks to the program, I think any of those tweaks will actually play to our benefit. And so it's just a long way of saying that I remain fairly optimistic that it will continue to be part of a Biden administration. And additionally, I think anyone who looks at what's going on with the administration, there are a lot of other programs in terms of sustainability, infrastructure investment that could also be catalysts for additional capital that would come into a program like this.
Yeah, I know initially a lot of developers were kind of confused by the program, but then I know a lot of developers that have opted into the program and have been very successful projects, and also have redeveloped rundown areas in a lot of the cities and towns around the country. So I hope they do keep that in place. Bill, we'll get back to you now. So, with the country starting to open up a little, how do you feel people are going back to taking public transportation? How do you feel that are they going to go back to the public transportation right away? Is it going to take a while? And, I'm going to give you a two-part question to this, because we also have the active transportation and complete streets relate to the infrastructure and encouraging economic growth. So then those two pieces, and I because we're running short of time, I wanted to try to combine those two questions.
Oh, that's fine. So with the pandemic, I think the pandemic has thrown a monkey wrench in a lot of different things, a lot of questions, and we're probably not going to be able to answer those questions for some time. On the public transit area, where we were seeing tremendous, especially in the East, tremendous growth in commuter rail. You had your online transit, and both in Rhode Island and Mass, the transit agencies were really re-examining and seeing how they could even make it more competitive with bus rapid transit systems, things like that. So what the pandemic obviously has done is, everyone who could is working from home. So the office space, the office user, let's say in downtown Boston, is at home either 4 days a week, 5 days a week right now. Commuter rail traffic is, you go by any of the commuter rail lots, it's pretty much empty. Bus transit, as you're closer to the cities, whether it's Providence or Boston, has picked up. It's not where it was, but there's going to be a group of people that, again, depending on their job as it opens up, they depend on the bus transit, so they will shift back to it a bit. And I said there's a lot of questions as to when do. It may not even be when do people feel comfortable getting on a train again. It's, are people actually going to be working in the 20, 30, 40-story building again, or how many days? I know our own office, we're probably majority millennials. They love this thing of working from home, and where we probably will shift to something like be in the office 1 to 2 days a week, shared workspace. It's enabling that group to work from home. They can live in Boston if they want and don't have to commute up to where our office is. The active transportation, so data shows us that almost 30% of all the trips made in the country, and this is old data, but not that old, are about 1 mile or less. Almost 40% are 2 miles or less. 1 mile or less is a real walkable. And if you look at the Tidewater project with the transit hub, the Conant Thread, downtown Pawtucket, the neighborhood, you just go around a half-mile radius around Tidewater or a mile. You know, it's extremely walkable with a large population that if there's an inviting walk, a safe walk, sidewalk's in good shape, it's ADA compliant. We do a lot of complete streets work in town-wide in communities, and you don't realize how many times we'll see a crosswalk with a ramp on one side and someone in a stroller or a wheelchair gets to the other side and there's vertical curb, and they got to wheel down 50 or 100 feet to find a driveway to, or you know, work their way up over the curb. But you know, there's all those little things. There's impediments out there that 15 years ago we didn't give much attention to, and now 5-10 years, within the last 5-10 years, we really are paying attention to it. The pandemic is, like I said, it's exploded that kind of thing. You walk around a neighborhood multiple times, you're going to see, you're going to pick out, oh, this sidewalk square is disheveled from the next one over, so I got to be careful, I'm going to trip. Or you see the ramps out there, or the crosswalks, things like that. So on the public transit side, Rick, yeah, there's some questions. I think the bus is still going to be there, commuter rail. The transit hub is still going to be an asset. I was talking with South Shore Chamber yesterday in Mass. We do a lot of work in Weymouth. 2 commuter rail stations, right now empty, but they're still an asset. Even if the office people don't go back to Boston, eventually life is going to get to where, hey, I can take the train into Boston and walk around the waterfront, or, you know, reverse it down to Rhode Island, you know. So it's still a neighborhood asset. Now around the transit station, now you might do some different kind of thinking where you don't need the 300, 400 parking spaces. You can convert that to something else. The old parking garage, that's going to be another thing that is going to change, where that become an asset for changeover to something else, adapted to some other use. There's people looking at them as adapting them to residential. So anyways, there's I think a lot of changes. The next 5 years is going to tell us a lot. I don't see us going all the way back to where we were, but where we're heading is, you know, there's that push, active transportation and health, and it all ties together with economic growth and prosperity. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of.
Yeah, you know, and you know, I think we're going to see things get back closer to normal in the next couple of months, as long as something drastically doesn't happen. Because if you noticed, about a month ago, the traffic situation was still fairly light, and up until the last couple of weeks, we're right back to, you know, the 2-hour delay to get into the city. You know, the traffic is getting heavy again. So I think that people are starting to get back out. People are starting to go back into, some people are still starting to go back into the office and take public transportation again. Although I don't know if the train falling off the track yesterday in the Boston area will help it much, but yeah, you know, I do think that people will start going back to the public transportation again. You know, we're coming close to the end, and I got a couple of questions, but before we go, I wanted to ask Jeff one more question, because this is kind of a biggie, and I think this is going to be, we're going to start to see this now that the new administration and the eviction moratoriums are coming to a close or coming to an end. Well, we think they are. How do you think these are going to affect the multifamily properties and even residential? You know, because
yeah. I mean, I think the eviction moratorium has kind of been really a double-edged sword, where borrowers are certainly taking the blunt of it, or rather landlords are taking the blunt of it, versus the tenants that are kind of, that need the help, that are, you know, at least going to be able to stay where they're placed. But I think that's going to be really something cautious, something that we should just cause caution, because it could shock the market in a couple months, depending on each municipality as they roll out of their eviction moratoriums. That would that could potentially make vacancy skyrocket in certain areas and pockets. But, you know, overall, when we're thinking about how that's going to trend over the next year, we think that with the economic recovery coming in, at least the people that may get displaced will at least be able to have employment and at least continue their benefits to remain where they're living at. So that's certainly, you know, we never know. I mean, they could come out, you know, in the next couple months with different guidance, but I think that that's certainly something we would watch. And with the new administration, we did take on a lot of debt with the past administration. So where we're at now, you could generally expect taxes to increase even by a minimal amount. So we're getting a lot of calls on our different tax strategies in order to save on their tax liabilities. So that includes the 1031 exchanges, which fingers crossed, hopefully that doesn't get changed. And also the opportunity zone investments, which you know, the panelists have been mentioning here. That's certainly been garnered a lot of demand. You know, a lot of our institutional equity folks are looking for those opportunities to either partner up with the local municipality or developers that own the site to help develop them and take advantage of at least some of their tax incentives. And then I think just in terms of the short term, to get from, you know, for the next year while throughout the recovery, borrowers should really just look at what their loans look like or what their debt positions are, because there are loan features that you could take advantage of and some lenders are offering in terms of whether it is interest only periods or early rate locks in order to mitigate interest rate risk in the future, extension periods and like short-term funding vehicles to recapitalize yourself. You know, where we are kind of in a place where liquidity is certainly a focus point. And I think that if borrowers aren't managing their liquidity correctly, that could end up going against them, especially in a turbulent time.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go over a couple of questions because we're running out of time and I have another webinar after this. So, and I'm sure everyone else is busy. So let's see. Here's one from Susan Murray. The SBA 504 program is a fantastic way to purchase real estate with only 10% down. I would like to know, I would like to see this program discussed. So I think, I mean, Jeff probably knows a little bit about this. I'm not sure if anyone else has any idea on it.
Yeah, so we have clients that do SBA loans, and it's a great program. You know, frankly, it is, you know, whether it's a refinance or an acquisition, it is a great program. The borrower is able to capture some really low cost of capital, but at the same time, it is about processing time. Sometimes SBA loans can take up to 6 to 9 months at this point, and when you have the government involved, that's just the something that you have to deal with. And if you have the time and the energy to put up with that, then absolutely, as opposed to going conventional. But you know, I think that you kind of have pros and cons with both programs, or whether you're deciding whether to do SBA or conventional, depending on your capital needs. If you need the higher leverage, then absolutely SBA would still be a good vehicle. But you know, keep in mind there's a lot of processing time. I'm hearing at least 6 months for an SBA loan.
This is another question. Do you envision reduced demand for office space?
Is that to me?
No, anyone can answer these. It's open for discussion.
Well, I see Nancy commented in the chat that she read in the NAOP, must have been an email newsletter yesterday, that just 12% of the workers are back in Boston and 25% are back in suburbs. So I know our office, our lease was coming up end of November, and a year ago we were looking to get more space, and now we are looking at less space, but as I said before, shared work spots for the staff and everything. So I don't know. That question of, I don't know, the 30, 40 story office building, I don't know what's going to really happen there.
So you know, that type of office building is certainly a different concept than what we have here at Quonset, right? We have single story office that doesn't have 200 people in it, right? It has, I've got one building I think has maybe 25 individual offices, and some of them are leased multiple offices to one business, but some of them are just one business in one office. We have not, in early pandemic days, the parking lots were a little bit less full. But now it seems most everyone in those offices are back. We're basically seeing the same amount of traffic, parking, requests about heat and stuff that come in as we did before. But I think that goes to the type of office, right? So maybe it's not a general office question. Maybe it's a, what does it look like and how does it function and how many people do I have to interact with to get to my office? Maybe that's, more the question. And like I said, we just built a brand new office building that's the same model. I've already have it half leased. So I don't see our type really diminishing at all. And maybe that also could be due to the fact that a lot of the people who are in our office space are in more of a creative industry, right? So I think when you need to brainstorm, when you work best by conversation, then that might be a different need for office than if, I know every lawyer I know is working from home, right? Because they do their work in sort of by themselves. So maybe that's the question too. So I don't know that there could be a blanket statement about office in general. It's probably office type and what you do and how you use it.
Great. Well, we're running out of time. We ran out of time. I want to thank everyone for attending today. I want to thank speakers on the panel. I also would like to let everyone know that this has been recorded and will be up on our YouTube channel as well as on the New England Real Estate Journal website. So if anyone wants to see this, anyone that has registered will get the link to this event and they can watch it at their leisure, grab the family, sit around the family room and put it on the big screen and watch it with some popcorn. It'll be a lot of fun, I tell you. So I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I hope to see you all at our future events. Have a great day.